Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Rogue Eye Media. My name is Alex Schlerf, and today we're going to be doing my review of the newest Insidious movie, Insidious Out of the Further. This will be, for the most part, a non-spoiler review. I actually don't know. Is there any? Yeah, I'll have a slight spoiler section at the end of this where I kind of just talk about the ending and where the franchise could potentially go from here. But besides from that, this will be a non-spoiler review. I'm not going to go super into depth about things. And yeah, if I look over here, by the way, I have my review on Letterboxd on here where I just have some notes just to make sure I'm all caught up on that. So yeah, we're going to get right into this. Yeah, it's going to be non-spoiler to start off for the most part. And then at the end, I'll have slight spoiler discussion, but timestamps are all in the description if you want to see all of that. Thanks for clicking on this video. Thanks for all the support. We have a lot of cool stuff coming up. I'm recording this, posting it on Sunday. I actually have another horror review coming up tomorrow. I got an early screening for something that I can't talk about until tomorrow, but keep an eye on our TikTok and our blog for that. And yeah, we're gonna keep rolling in the end of the summer for movies and into the fall and into award season. So yeah, for Insidious, just to start, my real experience with this franchise really just comes in the form of I watched all of the Insidious movies. There's five before this. I watched all of them like 6 months ago. So pretty recently. I don't really know why. I just ended up getting roped in to watch the first one with a friend. And then I just decided to watch the rest of them because I knew the new movie was coming out. So I have a pretty fresh perspective on these movies just because I've seen all of them recently. But going into this movie, like I really like the first Insidious movie. I think it's one of the better horror movies that I've seen, at least recently. And the rest of them are fine. There's some good parts to all of them, but the franchise is nothing special to me. And like to be honest, the last few, Red Door, Last Key, I think Chapter Three, I just wasn't super into them. Again, there was good parts to them, and I watched them and I enjoyed it slightly. But going to this new one, like I didn't watch much of the promo, but like I wasn't really sure what to expect. I was kind of like, I'm not sure if I want to see more of this franchise. I don't think it should be much of a franchise like this with all these connections to the old films. I felt like, I don't know, I just didn't feel like I was super excited. I was excited to see it because I was going to review it for this blog, but like, if I wasn't reviewing for this blog and I didn't have any time to see it this weekend, I probably wouldn't have seen it because the reviews were a little bit mixed. But I will say, just getting into this review a little bit, I actually was pleasantly surprised by this movie, and I have a lot of issues, and it's just a 3 star for me. It's and maybe you could even go lower than that. There's a lot of negatives that I would have, and it's not perfect. And if you typically don't like this franchise, you probably won't like this. But like I said, I came into this movie not really sure I cared about the franchise anymore, and I left a little bit more excited, and I was satisfied with this movie going in with those expectations. So yeah, I think if you are a fan of this franchise and you are a horror fan, and I don't know, you've liked the trailers going into this, you like any of the cast or the filmmakers, I would definitely give this one a chance because I was someone who didn't have that excitement and those expectations going into it, and I still enjoyed this a lot. So yeah, that's kind of my baseline review. Again, gave it a 3 star. For me, I'll get into the ranking later on. Just starting with the positives, I think my main positive for this was that this is a story that is very self-contained. One of my problems with some of the past Insidious films is the kind of ridiculous need to connect to past projects, whether it's a cameo, whether it's a reference, or whether it's a full-blown character arc throughout the movie. Obviously Red Door, we had a ton of connections to the first film. But obviously there is some connections here. You see a couple cameos throughout of certain monsters. It's not a spoiler that Elise is in this. She's been in the promo and all of that. But for the most part, this is a very creative and self-contained story, which I really appreciated because I didn't need to see more of these older characters. I wanted to get I'm cool with this universe. I think the concept of it is all really interesting, and the whole dream walking thing. Seeing the further come into the real world, like or just the further in general is an interesting concept to me. And I just didn't need to see a crazy amount of connections to the old films. I think it was ready, or it was time to move on, and I'm glad we have. There is the Elise inclusion, which I'll get into in a second. But for the most part, this is a self-contained plot, and it feels very new for the franchise. Although there are a lot of elements that are, obviously being taken from the canon of this universe. We have the Further as a big part. We have the dream walking thing. We have all of this stuff that is being carried over, but at the same time, this did feel really new, and I did really appreciate that. As someone that felt kind of out on these over connectedness, and a lot of my problems with even the movies that I guess the two movies that came in this franchise so far that were within the franchise and had certain connections to the main ones, but were new characters and new plots, were Chapter 3 and Last Key. So obviously, those movies I didn't like as much, even though they had a new plot. But I do think this one was able to really utilize the universe and make a creative and new plot, which I really appreciated. I liked all of that. I also really liked the fact that this movie has a lot of really creative sequences. There's a few that I can mention, which I won't get into a ton because I don't want to spoil them. But there's a sequence with the couch cushions that is really good. There's a lot of dentist related sequences that I thought were really creative and really just gross. I'll get into this in a second, but they do. This is a PG-13 movie, which might ostracize a lot of people, especially horror fans. But I do think they're able to stretch it a lot in a lot of areas, specifically the gory kind of scenes, and especially these dentist scenes where they're like pulling teeth out and pulling hairs out of the mouth. And, you got like creepy dentists from the Further. I thought all of that was really good. It did start to get a little repetitive towards the back half, which I'll talk about in my negative section, but I did really appreciate those creative sequences. They did feel new for this franchise and did have me on the edge of my seat for the most part. So I like that a lot. That's another one of my positives for this. I'm trying to just make sure that I don't jump to the negatives too quickly. Yeah, I really was into the first hour of this. Again, I loved how it was really creative. It was all new characters and all new plot. None of the actors involved were overly recognizable, which made it, a lot easier for me to get into the story and not see like Patrick Wilson and kind of feel a weird connection to all of that. Again, I liked how they did that whole new cast, whole new characters, and really the only thing that is the same in this movie compared to the other movies is the general concept. So again, the dream walking, the I don't know what that's actually called. I'm just calling it dream walking. But the dream walking, the concept of the Further being involved. Obviously, Elise is involved, but kind of at a lesser rate. There's a few like references at the end that are very small things, but I'm not really counting those. So yeah, I really like that they just used the skeleton of the universe and instead built up this very kind of slowly built up these characters and made us interested in them. And yeah, again, that first hour for me was really selling me. I don't know if I was ever going to go higher than like a 3.5 or a 4 star, maybe even just a 3.5. But I was really into it at the beginning, and that really helped my experience for sure. Yeah, I think to be perfectly honest, like I've been very vocal on my letterbox, and this is probably a bad thing as someone who runs a blog professionally. But I've been very vocal about the fact that I did not enjoy the over inclusion of Elise in these movies. I think the actor is good. I really liked her inclusion in the first two movies. But then after that, I was kind of just like, let's move on. We don't need to see more of her, especially when she was showing up like I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but she showed up at the end of Red Door. And I'm just like, why? Like, I don't need to see her anymore. Like, this is not a character that's like a superhero that needs to appear in multiple projects. Like, it's a cool character, but I do not need to see her anymore. And then obviously going into this movie, I saw her more in the promo than anyone else. And I really thought this is going to be her story. I tried to avoid the trailers as much as possible for this one, which I think was the right choice. I would recommend that to you guys. If you have not seen the trailers yet, just go into it blind. But yeah, I saw like her in some of the promo for it, and I was kind of like, God, like we're doing the Elise thing all over again. Great. It's going to be super repetitive. But fair enough to everyone involved in making this film because I actually did not mind her in this film. I liked how it was very minimal. It made a lot of sense. It didn't feel forced. There was kind of a sweet through line with the way she connects to the main character and her daughter. Yeah, I thought all of that was actually done really well, and I really liked her inclusion in this movie. Now, if anyone from the Insidious franchise, Blumhouse, whatever, is watching this, do not take this as a sign to put Elise in every Insidious movie going forward. I think we're good. I don't know if I need her anymore. But yeah, I did enjoy her inclusion in this, surprisingly so. I was really worried about it going into it, seeing her in the promo and stuff, but she was much more of a supporting character in this. She took a big step back. She comes into the story about halfway through and then comes out of it, then comes back in, and the good thing is that they're able to make the main plot and the main characters, they get her help at some points, but for the most part it is very separate, which I did really appreciate, and that was a big positive for me. um yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any other big positives. I could go into a lot of those sequences that I really liked, but I don't want to get into spoilers. But yeah, I mean, this is an enjoyable movie. Like, I know I only gave it a 3 star, and I'm going to get into the negatives in a second that are going to be pretty prominent negatives that I'm not going to budge on. But again, if you like the Insidious franchise, if you like horror, if you were excited on the promo for this, or if you're just, I don't know, you have a movie pass, you just want to see a movie on a Sunday, like I would recommend this movie for sure. It is a lot of fun, a lot of parts. Not many like oohs or ahs. So I wouldn't say it was the best theater experience. I'm a big supporter of the movie theater, so I'm always going to tell you go see it in a movie theater. But if you're deciding whether it's worth it to spend the money or wait to streaming, I think this is one where you could wait for streaming, and I think the experience would be pretty similar. But yeah, those are my positives. Getting into the negatives, I think one of the things that comes up a lot in this franchise for me, and especially from the last few movies, is the over insistence on lore dropping and making this deep and convoluted lore, especially towards the end. Again, I love the first half of this, maybe even the first hour of this, but just when they started to get to the end and they started to bring in more characters and they started to drop a little bit of lore. Again, I like that they kept the lore to a little bit more of a minimum here. I think that's been a big problem in a lot of the other movies, especially Last Key. But for this one, I think at the end, I was just getting lost with all the characters. There's kind of like 4 different settings that we're bouncing around. We have like the main character, we have the cop, we have the stuff going on in the further, we have the old people in the real world that are kind of possessed. Like we have so oh, we have so much stuff. Jeez, I'm gonna have to cut that out. We have so much stuff going on at once towards the end where I just got confused, and not really confused. Like I guess I knew what was going on, but there were points where I just realized like I am totally lost. I am not understand. I can't say understanding because I knew what was going on. I wasn't like confused about what was happening or the ending or anything like that. There were just points where I was like, okay, this is too much. Too much is going on right now. There's too many characters. There's too many plot lines. There's too much lore. So that became a problem for me in the back half. Again, I loved how although the first hour is, there are a lot of crazy sequences and there are a lot of characters involved, it feels very contained and it feels very grounded, as grounded as it can be for a story about demons coming in the real world. Like, I get it. But it did feel very contained and grounded for me, which I really appreciated. So when that stopped happening on the back half of this movie, it started to lose me a little bit. Again, it really just brought this down from like a 3.5 to a 3 star for me, out of 5. So it wasn't a huge, it wasn't like if this was fixed, this would be like the greatest movie ever. But that was a big negative for me that I did, struggle with on, towards the third act of this movie. So that's my first negative. The other thing is that I think there's a few, and this kind of goes into what I was just talking about. I think there's a few plot lines that come up throughout the film that aren't perfectly executed all the way through. And I think the main one for me was the relationship between the mom and the daughter. I'm gonna have to tiptoe around spoilers here because the ending is somewhat related to this complaint. But the way I can describe for the people who haven't seen this movie is like the two main character, or not the main character of this movie is, I guess I never really talked about the plot at the beginning, which I should have. But the main character of this story is, experiencing this trauma that's been passed down from her mother, that we find out there's some connection to the further and all of that. But she is trying to avoid being a mother to her daughter like her mom was to her. It was a bit of a more complicated relationship, and we found out why later on. But this kind of kinship and this mother-daughter relationship is at the emotional core of the end of the movie. And for the first 30 to 45 minutes, like they have a great relationship. The daughter seems to be very well raised. She's very mature. She's making jokes about swearing. There's a love interest that comes in her mom's life, and the daughter is totally cool about it and is making jokes with him and all of that. So like they develop a very sweet bond between the two of them. And then like on a complete dime, there's like one thing that happens. She yells at her daughter like one time in like the middle of the movie, and then the bond is completely broken. The daughter hates her all of a sudden. She goes, we're about to get into the final climax, which is like 30 minutes long, but it is the final climax, and the daughter kind of goes away, and she comes back around with the story, but like the daughter kind of goes away and to this other house, and she wants to keep her safe and all of that, and like she's giving this speech about how she loves her and all that. She's saying "I love you," and the daughter doesn't even say it back. I'm like, come on, like 5 minutes ago they were this beautiful mother-daughter bond, and now all of a sudden she hates her, and then you come to the end, they forgive each other and all of that, but like when you're making that the emotional heart of this, and it's an Insidious movie, so like you can only go so far with like an emotional bond. But you get to the end, and that relationship is at the core of what's going on, and I just didn't feel as invested in it because they didn't execute it great all the way through. And like towards the end, you make this one scene where it seems like the daughter hates her all of a sudden, and I just couldn't get on board with that. I think yeah, I wish that would have been something where either it was a longer build up to the fact that the daughter is starting to break away from her, just like the mom did with her mom, back in the flashback from the beginning. If that was the case, I would have been fine because I understand that through line of storytelling, but they just didn't execute it right. There was literally one thing that happened, and all of a sudden the daughter isn't saying "I love you" to her mom when she might die. Like it's completely ridiculous. That was not something that I enjoyed. And then there's some other plot points that kind of lost me. I've made it very clear in this review that I don't like the overly messy lore drops. I wasn't totally interested in kind of the main villain here. They drop a very short amount of context and plot as to who he is and who he was, before this story and how it connects to our main character. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't really explored enough to interest me and to make him like the main villain in this. Excuse me. I think I would have maybe appreciated just having like more of a group of villains here. We have that whole group of kind of demons in the further that are following this cult leader. And I think you didn't really need to have him. I think you could have just had a big group of people, and that would have really emphasized. There's actually a really good scene towards the. I can't spoil it, but there's a really good scene towards the end with that big group of people and kind of how they are adapting to a situation they find themselves in, and it really helps emphasize the horrors of the situation. And that scene was great, and like that had nothing to do with the cult leader and all that. I really don't think they needed that. And that's really a plot line that just didn't interest me. So I think that was something where they didn't need to get involved with that. So that was kind of an issue for me. Yeah, I didn't put this in my review, but I think kind of my last big negative is the fact that although they are able to stretch the PG-13 rating in a lot of parts here, again, my main thing was like the gory sequences. I think those were really well done, effects wise and just creepiness wise. Like, there's a dentist scene in this where I'm like literally like I was gagging watching it. Like I literally, it was hard to watch, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when if you see the movie. But it's not very scary. It's not scary at all, to be honest. There was never really a point where I had a big jump scare. Or yeah, I was never really like on edge at any point in this movie. There were some good sequences. I just never was really scared. So I think the horror here was a little bit at a minimum, and I think that probably was due in part to the PG-13 rating. Now, I also do think, and I can't confirm this, I'd have to talk to the filmmaker myself and ask, but like I don't know if this was the intention, but I do think there was a little bit of intention by the filmmaker to not focus on the horror as much and instead to emphasize other elements within the horror genre. That's probably what I think they were going for. But still, when I'm going into an Insidious movie and with how really scary the first movie is, like the first movie, I watched it like at my house with all the lights off, and I was really scared, like genuinely on edge the entire time. And for this one, like I had an energy drink beforehand. I had an energy drink beforehand, so my heart was like my heart was going, but I still never jumped, was never on edge, was never like, oh my God, like that never happened literally once for me. And I don't think it happened to anyone else in my theater really too. So, not something that bothers me as much as someone who isn't a huge horror fan and someone who just got into horror, recently over the past few years. But I know it'll be a negative for some people, so I wanted to mention it. And it did bother me in certain parts. So I do want to mention that as well. Um, is there anything else before I get into my ending, reaction? Yeah, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but there were a couple sequences that did tend to get repetitive throughout the story, specifically the dentist-related sequences. There were a few of them towards the end that just felt like reheated nachos. Like they literally just felt like they were doing the same thing over and over again. Um, Not a huge issue for me, but there was a part of me that was watching it and was like, okay, didn't we just get a sequence just like this? Um, they're pretty good, so I'm able to alleviate that negative a little bit, but it still was there for me, and I did still feel a little bit of repetitiveness. So I think that's worth mentioning. Um, yeah, I think that's really all I have for the negatives and for my general review. Again, I was out on this franchise for the most part, even though I just watched it recently, and I was kind of like, I'm not sure what this movie can do for me, but. I did really enjoy this, and I was satisfied by this. I think that's the best word I can give. I was satisfied by this movie as someone who didn't go into it with huge expectations. I think, yeah, I was satisfied. That's really all there is to say. In terms of my Insidious ranking, let me just do this real quick. Pulling it up on my computer. Yeah, there's six Insidious movies now. And again, if you want to see my letterbox, by the way, it's in the description. Check it out. Letterbox. I post both professional and kind of jokey reviews, so check it out. But I have my ranking here on Letterboxd. The way I rank it is the first Insidious is number one. Insidious Chapter 2 is number two. This most recent one, Out of the Further, is number three. The Red Door is number four. Chapter 3 is number five. And then The Last Key is number six. Yeah, I give the first Insidious a 4 star, and then the next three, or Chapter 2 and Out of the Further, I would give a 3 star, and then Red Door, I think I gave it 2 or 2.5, and then same with Chapter 3, and then Last Key is just terrible. I guess I'd give it like a 1 or 1.5 out of 5. But yeah, that's my ranking. If you have not seen the movie, click off now. I'm going to go into a little bit about the ending and where I potentially think this franchise could go, if anywhere, from here. Because there was a post credit scene. Yeah, if you have not seen the movie yet, there is a mid credit scene. So stick around. The lights stayed off in my theater, so you should be able to tell when the credit scene is going to be. But just in case, stay there for the post credit scene. There is one post mid credit scene. There is one mid credit scene in the middle of this one, so check that one out. But yeah, thanks for watching. If you haven't, come back here when you've seen the movie. Yeah, let's get into the spoilers right now. Really, all I'm going to talk about is this ending, and the mid credit scene. The ending itself doesn't really set up anything for me. I think again, this was a very self-contained story. I do think that character, our main character, and the fact that she can take things from the further to the real world and vice versa. If they ever do decide to do what they did with Red Door and like bring in a bunch of characters all over again, I think she could be someone that could come back into play. Because I think that is something that is very creative and is a very new and important character in this universe. I actually wouldn't mind that. I know I said earlier that I really appreciate the self-contained stories, but I do think she was a good character and a really interesting character. So I think in the right context, kind of like I said about Elise in this movie, I think if used in the right context, she can be a character that can come back. Not Elise, but our main character in this one, I think, could come back, and I would be interested to see her come back again. But as for the mid credit scene, what? Like I don't know. I really have no clue what that was supposed to be teasing. So we got the cult leader in the dentist's office in the further, and the weird demon dentist is putting a saw through his teeth, and then the door closes. Anyone? Like, am I stupid? Please let me know if I am. I'm really curious. If you know more with the franchise than me and you have a better theory than me, I don't even have a theory, but if you have a theory, leave it in the comments below. I really want to hear it because I really don't understand what this is to be teasing. like, is the demon that's the dentist trying to make like a power play in the further and taking over kind of the cult subjects of this cult leader? Maybe that is it. Um, the red door is opening and closing. Is that meant to be something? I don't know. Honestly, if I were to go in another direction with this franchise and if I were to make another movie, which I assume they will, because I think this one will do well. But like we're coming up on what is this, number seven? If they made another movie, I mean, like, how much longer are we gonna go? Like, what is the end point here? Are we doing like Insidious Endgame? We're bringing in all the characters here. Like, I don't really understand. But I guess I'd be down for another movie. I don't know. It would depend. I mean, I'd probably watch it because I do this stuff for the site and I've seen all the movies now, so I might as well keep up with it. But I don't know. Like, dude, I I did like this movie and I was pleasantly surprised, but I don't know. I don't know. You need to get a pretty good filmmaker on this for me to get me invested and into the next movie. Again, I probably would see it because I'm me and I do this, not for a living yet, but I do this blog and I have the Regal Pass and all that, but I don't know. I don't know. Where do you guys think they're going to go from here? I don't really understand. If it were up to me, again, I would literally, you know what? What I would do if I was making another Insidious movie is I would make an entirely new set of characters, an entirely new plot, but put our main character from this one and put her in the Elise role that was in Out of the Further. Like, that's what I would do. I would make her someone who helps the main characters at some point, whether it's in universe or in the Further. And I would do that exact same thing again. Whole new cast of characters, whole new creative plot, whole new, wrinkle into it, like how the wrinkle in this one was going from the Further back and forth. That's what I would do for this movie, or for a potential seventh Insidious movie. But like I don't know. I guess they could. I just think all like the Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne stuff. I think it's just done. I don't think we need. I don't think we need any more lipstick monster or whatever. Which obviously he was in this movie at the end, by the way. I mean, I guess I'm in spoilers now, so I can say that. But I think that was just a cool cameo. But is there multiple Lipstick Man guys? Like, is that like a family? I don't know much about the lore of this, to be honest. I mean, I've seen the movies, but I'd be interested about that. But yeah, it was weird that the popcorn bucket for this movie was that character, but he's literally not in it at all until 1 second at the end. Like, I don't. I guess you know what? Actually, I guess that makes sense because when that those movies were coming out, the popcorn bucket trend wasn't really a thing as much. So I guess actually that makes sense. They're capitalizing on it. Fair enough. If you bought it, let me know. Send me a photo. But yeah, that's what I think. I don't really have a big idea of where I want this franchise to go or if I'd be invested, but please, if you're a fan of this franchise and you have a good pitch for another movie, please let me know. Or what directors you like to see on it, what characters you like to see on it. Obviously there's a lot of good up and coming horror directors right now. You got Curry Barker, you got Kane Parsons and plenty others. So let me know who you'd like to see tackle, another Insidious movie if they decide to go in that direction, which I think they will. I think this movie will do well. I think it had a pretty good opening. It dethroned Spider-Man for the first time, which is obviously very impressive, even though, what is this, like Spider-Man's fourth weekend, but still, it's still good. So yeah, let me know both where you think they could go, what you thought of this movie, what other horror movies you'd like me to review. I know there's a lot coming up, but I'm still kind of a novice in the horror game. So, there's some that are on my radar, but if there's anything you think I might not be looking at, let me know and I'll make sure to review it for the site. It's going to be hard to top Obsession from this year. I'm going to be totally honest, but that's a discussion for another day. Yeah. Thanks for watching so much. Thanks so much for watching. Geez, I'm all over the place, but thanks so much for watching. Thanks for all the support on the site, on the TikTok, on YouTube, on all of that. I really appreciate all of the comments, the likes, the reposts. I've been doing really well over the past few weeks, interactions wise, and it's propelled me to get a lot of cool opportunities that I'll be able to talk about very soon. So yeah, thanks for all the support. Can't do all this without you guys. And yeah, if you're new here, subscribe, like, comment. We got plenty of content here in this blog, general film reviews and news. We have Marvel reactions, DC reactions, all that stuff. We cover everything entertainment related on this site, both, on our blog, on YouTube, on TikTok, all that stuff. All the links are in the description below. Thanks so much. Yeah, so I will see you guys again. Keep an eye on the site tomorrow for a review of an upcoming horror movie, and I'm really excited about that. And keep an eye on all that content. But in terms of the YouTube channel, I've been trying to do videos. I've been switching my schedule around where like I do videos every Wednesday. So I don't know. Is there anything for me to do for Wednesday? Um, not anything coming out really, so maybe I'll do something creative. Maybe we'll see what happens on Wednesday. Geez, excuse me. So yeah, thanks for watching so much, and I will see you when I see you.